Welcome to Kate's Hangout on Air tonight. Happy Father's Day. I want to thank you all for coming here today because this is Father's Day. And if you're watching this, it's because you've taken the time out of a Sunday afternoon and a Father's Day to come and visit. So thank you so much for doing that. My name is Kate Bowditch, as you can see from this thing here. My name is Kate Bowditch. I am a therapist. I am a clinical hypnotherapist and a licensed mental health counselor. I've worked with groups. I work with individuals, both online and in person. People come here to my office, and you're always welcome either way. I have had about 20 years experience in this, and also as a group facilitator, and I do a lot of that right now as group work. So, individual or group, call me. Let's get your life back on track. So today's talk is about fathers and what they're about in terms of us. Now, everybody has a father. Everybody has a father, which is kind of cool. Some fathers come and go. Some are always there. Some are good guys. Some are not. Some are, you never see them. You don't know who they are. But you have one. Everybody has one. And there are advantages and disadvantages to every form of father. So I want to talk about fathers. I had a father, and I'll talk about my father. But what I really am looking at today is talking about the fact that fathers teach their children. It doesn't matter what kind of a father or who. Fathers teach their children, and they teach them whether or not they know it. Whether they sit down and say, today we're going to learn how to drive, or today I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes, or whatever it is, that's wonderful. But fathers also teach us unconsciously, unknowingly, by who they are and what they do. And so I want to just spend some time today on fathers. Every one of us has one, and some of us share, we think, the same father with our sisters and brothers, but the truth of that is that everyone's experience of dad is unique. Even twins remember different things about their dad, have different moments about who he was and what he had to teach them. Certainly in my family, my brother and I sort of had one dad, and my two sisters, who were younger than us by a lot, sort of had another dad. He was the same dad, and overall many of the same patterns, but our experience of him was very different. And so this can happen many times in a family, and so one person can have the memory of dad being a very wonderful, warm, easygoing kind of guy, and another one might remember him as very prickly and difficult. And why that is what we're going to also address tonight to a certain degree. And that's okay. It's perfectly natural. It is okay for there to be differences in the view. Two people walk to the top of the mountain, and one's an experienced hiker and the other is not, and their remembrance of the hike itself will be very different. And once they get there, what was the view and what did each one see and remember from the view will be very, very different, though they've both gone the same way and stood on the same overlook. So here we are with dads, and we're going to talk about fathers here, but there's a big difference in my mind between fathers and dads. And for most of us, for many of us, for most of us, I hope, father and dad are the same person. Fathers can father children. Dads raise them. Big difference. And in my deepest, darkest soul, I wish it were called Happy Dad's Day. I have a lot of respect for the man who steps up to raise the child and raise the child well. And it's most of the time the same guy who was the father. And hooray for that. That's a wonderful thing. But sometimes it's not. And we just take time to recognize that and say, Happy Dad's Day, Dad, too. So lessons. My dad could drink. He could drink. I never once saw him drunk. And he was always the one to drive everybody home or take the keys away from the one who was going to drive himself home and let him sleep on our couch or whatever. So he had an iron liver, which is too bad because that's what got him in the end. But I don't have that. And I learned very early in my young adult life that there is a big difference between people. There are those who can drink a lot and pretty much stay absolutely cold sober. And then there are people like me who can have, one glass of champagne and I'm feeling wonderful, and two glasses and I'm morose, and then weepy, and by the third one I'm stupid. This is not something I enjoy doing, so I don't do it. So I learned to be different from my dad in a very deep way very early in my life. Now, he and I looked a lot alike. We think a lot alike. I think, in truth, he would have preferred to have been just a kind of a backwoods kind of a guy. He went to school to become a stage set designer, and as a young man, and then there was this awkward thing called World War II, and that just changed everybody, and it changed everything. So when he came back, that was not an option anymore. And he had a wife and one child, my brother, and very soon I came along. So he kind of knuckled down and did what he had to do to make a living. And so somewhere in there, that quiet business of you knuckle down and you do what you need to do was sort of taught to me. And I could learn that because that made sense to me. But I also learned that you don't do what you love. Now, my dad was very lucky. He wound up working for the highway department, and his job was to make models of bridges that they were going to build, or to drive all over the mountains with a, he had a safety meter in his car. It was a state car, and he would drive around corners that had like no barriers and cliffs and all these things. And when the thing went into the red line, then he would note that speed, and then they would come, speed limit would be less by 5 of that particular speed that he was going. Luckily, he didn't do that very, very long. But then he started making models of bridges and landscaping of the roads, and really got back into the stage design, because that's what it was in miniature. And from there went into the museum field as a curator and exhibits designer, and that really was something he thoroughly enjoyed. But his idea of a wild weekend was to go and sleep outside up in the mountains and go fishing. So he was really kind of an outside guy. So what did he teach me overtly? I remember a lesson on how to make a whistle out of a spring willow. I can now make a whistle out of a spring willow. That was his overt thing. He liked to teach me how to do something. And I remember that lesson in particular. And I also learned what he taught me covertly, which was to how to whittle, how to keep a knife sharp, how to use a pocket knife, how to hang out on the riverbank where maybe nobody would see us for a while and just watch the river go by and soak in the beautiful Idaho world. So those were the covert lessons. Overt lessons from my dad were not many in number. He was a very private guy. He didn't mix with us kids very well or very often. He was kind, but he was sort of not very interested in us kids. Other than he was very good. He came home every day from work, never spent his money stupidly. It was good. Sometimes he would sing to us, especially at night, but he did not take joy in being the dad. He would do it on occasion, but it wasn't his thing. So I learned some hard lessons from him too. He didn't particularly understand why I would have any interest in going to college, or why should I? He never really fought me on it, but I think that was Mom. I know Mom was absolutely convinced that I would go to school, I would go to college, that's the way it was going to be, period. So Dad was kind of not so big on that. And I remember telling him a couple of times what I wanted to do in my life. And he just thought, well, it takes a lot of school, and that's going to be really expensive. So I kind of learned that I wasn't supposed to really push myself forward. And I wasn't really supposed to tear life out of its canvas, and make it mine. That was not a good lesson. He didn't teach me that overtly. It just kind of happened. So I've sort of thought about that and fought it through over my lifetime, is who am I, as my dad's child, who am I? And I can now look at some of those lessons of passivity and acceptance and disagree. Just disagree. Dad, no, that's not who I am. It's not what I'm about. And I wonder about my siblings, if they ever had conversations with my dad about college or future or what that's all going to look like. In fact, might ask them that when I see them next. But Dad was not that big on what my future was going to be. I think he was still kind of, you go to college to get married, so why don't you just not go to college and get married anyway? So, I mean, he didn't really get that. But he did teach me some wonderful things. He taught me about singing a little bit. Now, he would not teach me, although he had a wonderful voice, and I didn't, and he was very clear about the fact that I did not, which was a bad lesson. But the other lesson was that he sang anyway, and I learned to sing anyway. I learned to sing what I like to sing. He taught me about not being afraid of I have a little note over here. I was driving with him once, and we went off the road. And it was during a very big blizzard, and it was going up for a college interview that he was taking me to. And again, I think that was Mom. But we're driving, and it was just a blizzard. There's no other way around it. It was blizzard, and so we went just whoosh, right off the road. And I was watching with it's kind of odd curiosity when things get really bad. You become curious more than terrified. And here came the river. And we stopped right at the edge of this tumbling place. If there had been no snow, we would have been upside down in the river. But we weren't. We were in this deep, silent, soft snow. And we kind of stopped. And I mean, there were no seatbelts at that time. I don't know why I wasn't up in the windshield, but I wasn't. And I looked at my dad, and he, believe it or not, he said, "Damn, there goes $25 for a tow truck." He got out of the car and walked up on the highway and flagged down the tow truck. Now, this was back east where the minute it snows, every independent tow truck hits the road, and all they do is haul people back up on the road for $25. It was a profound lesson because there was no drama, no blame, just, oh, damn, $25, poof. And I thought, oh, it's okay to handle things calmly and pragmatically. And that was kind of the first time I had learned that lesson. Our family did do a little bit of drama about everything, and I was definitely part of the drama. You know, anytime anything was worth the drama, everybody was in the drama with all the weeping and what have you. And I suddenly realized that it was a choice. The drama is a choice. And it took me a while for that to really sink in. The drama is a choice. And I thank you, Dad, for that. What else? He was very funny. And very creative. A very creative man. He loved to take things apart, put things together, that sort of thing. Now, that's the father I had. He could make fire out of anything. Up in the woods. He was sort of his own man. I think he would have been fine up in the backwoods of New Hampshire for the rest of his life, living in a cabin. I think that being out west probably saved his life. That was the other part, is that he absolutely loved the Rocky Mountains, and he loved talking to people. And that was something that I could watch him do. He could stand and talk to people. He could talk to a post and make it laugh and get information out of it. But I remember him once saying, just standing and talking with a man, and I think it had to do with, he was an old horseshoer, old-fashioned kind who made his own horseshoes, what have you. And it was snowing. It seemed to be snowing. A lot of my memories about snow in the wintertime. And when he got back in the car, I was a frozen mess. I was ready to do the boo-hoo-hoo, and I'm so cold, and I want to go home, and that sort of thing. And I'm not quite sure why I was in the car with him, way up the middle of nowhere, talking to some guy who makes horseshoes. But when he got back in the car, I asked him, "And how do you do that? You're just standing. You don't even have a coat on. You just have the red checkered, shirt those guys would wear." And Dad said, "Well, if you're completely relaxed, your blood flows better, and you're warmer." Of course, I couldn't figure out how on earth you could relax when you were freezing to death, but I have tried it on occasion, and it's really true. You consciously relax everything, and you will be warmer than if you're all bound up trying to stay warm. So thank you, Dad. So I'm mostly talking about my dad. It's kind of a quiet sort of um, hangout tonight. However, working past all the things that a person can be angry about Dad, and Lord knows everybody has real reasons. Dads who never show up, dads who hurt you, dads who hurt your mother, dads who break things that are special to you, dads who demand too much of you. You know, these can raise the angry animal in us, and our anger becomes our defense. It becomes our shield against further hurt, further wounding, and supposedly further anger. However, anger feeds on itself, and if you can, in any way, go through the anger, go past it just for a minute, for a second, for just a moment, and find something that in fact was okay about Dad, you're free. You're suddenly free. And that's worthwhile. I know I've had many clients who are in that place where, well, Dad was just a bum, so I'm a bum. You know. And when you think about it, Dad was maybe broken and sad, and maybe Dad never had the guts to stand up and say, I'm gonna do it differently. He didn't have the strength, he didn't have the courage, whatever it was, to say, no, the buck stops here. And believe me, that does take strength and it does take courage. But if you can look past all of the obvious and painful and hurtful and angry things, and see the child that your father was once, long ago, and what was done to him. If you can see that, and then come forward to at least one moment where he actually was just neutral, or he was okay, or he bought you the ice cream, or he got you the candy bar, or he put you on his shoulders, or he talked to you, bragged about you in front of somebody else, or he came to the play. Maybe he stood in the back, but he came to the play. Maybe he left early, but he came to the play while you were in elementary school or whatever. If you can go there, you're free. And the rest of the anger can be kept by choice, but not by compulsion. Or you can start to just say, yeah, he was really not the dad that I would be if I had had me. And you can start to let him go. You can let some of that stuff go. So, my friends, happy Father's Day. It's about finding your way back to your father, about being the father that perhaps you are, if you are a father. It's about looking at the father of your child in your child's face, and again, finding the good because your child is 50% the father. And finding the good, so that every time you see that father in the child, even if you're angry at the real father, the child is innocent and you can see the good there. And of course, if you're not a father, you're a woman and will never be a father and will not ever be walking down that path. Happy Father's Day anyway. We all have fathers. We carry them around in our minds, if not our present lives. And this is a way of acknowledging them. It doesn't say you have to love them unconditionally or love everything they ever did, but you're here because of them. And isn't that great that you're here? So thank you and good night. Call me if you'd like to talk about some things. We can connect online, in person. I'm in Everett, Washington. So that's Snohomish County, and that's where most of the face-to-face people come. But if you come, I will see you. And if you call, we'll make arrangements to meet online. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night.